I got is not a rental. I own that motherfucker. Figure it out. Shit is simple.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of NCAA Game Day on this Thursday night with myself, Andrew Goldberg, and of course my co-host John Alfonso Iadevaia on this Thursday night. Pretty warm day here where I am in Jersey. Obviously, the NFL draft is on in about 1 minute and 5 seconds as it goes on the ticker here in front of my TV. And, John, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Andy. You know, we obviously got the draft on right now, some playoff hockey, but, big weekend. First opening weekend of the NCAA lacrosse season. We've already had the play-in games. We've got the Tewaaraton watch list finally whittled down to the final 5 nominees, and, pretty pumped here as we get set into the prove it or lose it season.
Yeah, exactly. And that was after a lot of excitement over the past week and a half between all the conference tournaments that were happening, and just in general with everything. You saw a lot of guys step up, like the Thompsons. They went above and beyond what they usually were doing. And you saw a couple guys who, Matt Kavanaugh of Notre Dame, attackman, also step up the past couple days or games for them. He played really well for them. And obviously now we're in it. We're in the postseason NCAA tournament. It's win or go home. John, what did you think about this past weekend in terms of the tournament before we get to the Tewaaraton Award?
Well, I got the chance to cover the America East and the CAA tournament. Those were thrilling tournaments from what I saw. First off, the Thompsons in that Stony Brook game. Lyle himself literally carrying the team on his back at certain times. Miles with a 7-goal performance. Incredible. I mean, I can never say enough about watching those guys. And I honestly felt when they were trailing by 1 goal with under a minute to go that this might have been the last time we were watching them. But Lyle does his thing, scores with 5 seconds left. They score in overtime, and then they just run all over UMBC. And then the CAA game, the triple overtime game between Drexel and Hofstra. Oh boy, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. It was very thrilling to say the least for both crowds. A lot of heart attacks, a lot of nerves, but credit the Dragons. They performed very well. They performed quite admirably and deserve to be in the NCAA tournament. Ivy League, obviously, that was a little bit of shock to say the least with Harvard again by Yale. And Penn beating Cornell. I mean, we've said it before that Penn sometimes falls short, but I mean they've just won this season. When all you do is just win. Yes, I just said that. It's hard to argue, honestly. And the rest of the conference tournament, I mean, great for Richmond. Great to see them go. I was surprised to see Air Force make it over Fairfield. But and then the playing games we just had were pretty thrilling, especially that Brian Sienna game, and I think that it's really set the stage up for this Saturday, which is going to be quite impressive.
Yeah, and I forgot to tell everybody, you can tweet at us, of course, at Goldberg, at John_A_Iadevaia, and at NCAA Game Day. John, we're actually pretty close to 200 followers. We're at 188 right now. So if we could get to 200, that would be a little milestone for us here on NCAA Game Day. So I think we got to challenge the listeners to get to 200 followers. Tell all your friends, family, whoever, that we're close to 200 and we're rising up the ranks in Twitter.
Join the movement. We have cookies.
Join the movement, exactly. But getting back to the NCAA tournament, I mean, it really got off to a fantastic start. Not the actual tournament, but the conference tournaments right before in terms of automatic bids. First, we went with the ACC tournament, and what a tournament that was. I mean, we can't talk about that enough. I think that was lost in the entire shuffle this past week. We had Syracuse versus Duke and Maryland versus Notre Dame. Syracuse pulls it out of I don't know where exactly, but they found it somehow. Henry Stotts behind the back to I think it was Kevin Rice for the goal. I mean, ballsy move. I mean, if he had thrown that and it would have been picked, Coach Desko would have went off on him. I mean, I get livid when my players go behind the back. Imagine him in college doing that. And then, with 10 seconds left, they do the same exact thing, minus the behind the back, and win the game in an absolute thriller. And then Notre Dame wins against my Terps, which was a heartbreaker, with Kavanaugh scoring at the end with 6 seconds left. And then Connor Kelly, with all their issues, Notre Dame and all their issues, in goal with Shane Doss, Connor Kelly. Connor Kelly stands on his head, stays tight on the pipe like you're supposed to as a goalie, and saves the shot and actually clinches the tournament for Notre Dame. I think if they didn't win that ACC tournament, they probably wouldn't have made it, honestly.
No, honestly, especially when you look at that Army game, which, can I just say, by the way, when that game was played, they scored more combined goals, Army and Notre Dame, than Albany and Stony Brook.
Yeah, which is incredible because Albany put up 20 and Albany won the game 20-11.
No, that was the UMBC game.
Or sorry, yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
17-16, but I mean,
Right.
that's still incredible. I mean, first off, Army, which is one of the lower scoring teams in the nation, and
Both
Notre Dame,
offense were.
both offenses are in the lower half in terms of offense, and they both combined for 35 goals.
Yeah. Glessner went off, by the way. He might be one of the more underrated players. Like, I'm sure, like, if you go in lacrosse circles, like, a lot of people know, oh, John Glessner. But I don't think a lot of casual people really know John Glessner. I mean, he is fantastic. And I think they were talking on the telecast of that Notre Dame game was that his brother, who's supposed to be better, is actually coming in next year. And so it's going to be him and his brother on the team, and Army really brings back a lot of talent next year. They lose virtually nobody.
They bring back Sippery on at faceoff, and they still have their goaltender as well as Gleasoner, obviously.
Right.
But I mean, I felt that Army had a great season this year. Just fell short in some games, especially that Lehigh game in the semifinals.
Right.
But I mean, just keep an eye on the cadets, man. They're going to be good. Al Barisi winning Coach of the Year, that's well deserved for him.
Right. But when we're talking about surprises, oh, sorry, I cut you off, John.
I was gonna say, yeah, you were mentioning surprises.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a few of them actually in the conference games that we saw. I mean, if we want to start in the CAA, obviously the Drexel game, for example. I mean, that was one of the bigger surprises. Not for the fact that Towson almost beat Drexel, but the fact that how Drexel came back. And then they won the CAA championship in the same exact way. I think that was a bit surprising, to say the least.
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise, though, had to be Air Force. I mean, Air Force ran the table, won the ECAC tournament. I mean, Air Force, by the way, that's their first tournament appearance since 1988. That they're making their first NCAA tournament appearance since then. And to do that, they beat an Ohio State team that really might have been overrated at the beginning of the year. They came on better. They came on strong, I guess you would say, towards the end of the season. But I think that was more because of the quality of opponent they were facing than their actual playing a lot better. But they beat that. They actually handled them 14-7. And then they come back in the ECAC championship and beat Fairfield 8-7, and Fairfield was a top 20 team and kind of a dark horse. I was high on them in the beginning of the year. Jack Murphy's good goalie. They had Colin McLinden, a very good midfielder, but they won 8-7, and now they find themselves in the NCAA tournament. And they played in the playing game. They took out Richmond, who, I mean, probably didn't deserve to get there, but they won their conference tournament even at 6-10. Yes, 6-10. So they pulled a Detroit Mercy. But before we get to those, a lot of the teams were kind of locked into positions. We weren't really surprised by the teams per se that were in it. I think the only team that you could argue maybe having a shot is Hofstra, but it was really between Hofstra and Harvard. And in my opinion, Harvard made it because harder conference, strength of schedule, not conference, but strength of schedule, and then also their bigger wins, they had more than Hofstra did.
Yeah, those losses they had, Hofstra, were also more harming. Marquette, the start of the season, St. John's also proved to be a bad loss as well, and that was in overtime. Harvard never lost to really anyone that they should not have lost to.
Right.
That was their big thing. And agree with the strength of schedule. That was a big thing. I think the other thing that tipped the scale that if Harvard had lost to Cornell in that semifinal, the Ivy, I think Hofstra is in the NCAA tournament over the Crimson still. But because they beat the Cornell for the second time, and Hofstra wasn't unable to get that automatic bid, and like you said, because the conference was a little bit weaker this year than in years past, that really was the edge they gave to Harvard. Plus, I like to believe that there is some sort of a sexy pick in the bubble teams, and Harvard did have it, but I mean, they deserved it, though.
Yeah, they did.
Can we just bring it up because we haven't addressed it already?
Right.
The football on the field game against Yale. That was hilarious when I was watching that. It was unexpected.
Wait, what happened? I didn't see this.
So what happened was Harvard is trying to hold on to a 10-8 lead with under a minute to go against Yale.
Okay.
What happened is someone threw a football on the field from behind the Harvard bench.
Oh, no.
Eamon and Paul Carcaterra were laughing it up, honestly, deservedly so. But unfortunately, because that happened, the referees gave Harvard a 1-minute unreleasable penalty. And then when Chris Wojcik went to argue the call, he got another flag. 1 minute unreleasable. But Harvard was able to kill it off. Their goaltender made a big save, and was able to kill. And they were able to kill it off, run the time out, 10-8. But I mean, never seen anything like that before.
Yeah. So they were just like, was it like a football player, like just threw it on behind the bench, or were they like warming up? Like
it was some type of fan.
And I would get pissed about that. I mean, come on.
And it was a Harvard fan, I believe it was. I think there was there's no proof that's come out to say
right.
But I think it was a Harvard fan.
Yeah, but that's crap. Like, I mean, to throw a flag because one of your fans threw something on the field. I mean, as a ref, like, you can't make that call like that. Like, imagine if Harvard had lost that game. You know what I mean? Like, if Harvard had lost that game, I mean, I think it would have been a huge controversy in college, and you would have heard Quint, like, whining about it somewhere.
That would have gone all over ESPN for the wrong reason.
Oh yeah, but yeah. So but we won't argue about the teams that got in, but let's look at the teams that did make it and how they were seeded, because I have some problems with this, and I was talking to you a little earlier today, and we both are kind of irked by the fact that the NCAA, I feel like, became really lazy. You have rematches of games either in the season or from past years. Last year, Maryland played Cornell. This year, Maryland plays Cornell. Last year, Denver played North Carolina. This year, Denver plays North Carolina.
Syracuse and Bryant are replaying each other.
Right, because they beat Siena, but it had Siena won the playing game. It was Siena and Bryant. Bryant won 9-8. But had Siena won, it would have been a rematch. And I feel like they kind of just took the easy way out with all their picks. Is there an actual committee, or do they just go by the numbers? Because I feel like if they're going by the numbers, then you just take the top 20 teams. There's no debate. We know exactly who's going to be in, who's not going to be in.
Yeah, it's always that difficult decision. And then you always have the people that argue about, the teams that are left out on the bubble that are better than the AQs. But I mean,
right?
It's honestly, when I look at it, it's honestly, you live and die by the rules you set. And remember, you got to do, when they do these NCAA brackets, especially for lacrosse, it's always going to be based on economics, based on travel, and convenience in terms of where the quarterfinals and how the teams are going to go through that.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point, because I forget who tweeted out, I think it was Carcaterra or Dixon, he had actually said that the reason Albany is not playing Notre Dame is because the NCAA covers the expenses up to 400 miles. And Harvard is closer than Albany to Notre Dame or wherever they were going to go by like 30 miles or something. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That does not make sense. Hold on. I have to do this now.
It was I don't know if it's Albany to Notre Dame or Albany somewhere else, but that's the reason why some of these things happen, because they cover the 400 miles that, like, the NCAA covers the expenses of 400 miles. So they pick a team that's closer, like Harvard to Johns Hopkins would have been too far, I think. I want to say, I don't know how, or I don't. Yeah, I should be better prepared, but that's basically what it broke down to. And for some reason, in terms of what I was thinking is, instead of doing North Carolina, Denver for like the third straight year, why doesn't the committee try doing Johns Hopkins versus Denver? You got the new age Denver program rising up in the West, new program, sexy new program against the old, reliable, traditional program in Johns Hopkins. Two of the best coaches to ever coach the game of lacrosse in Coach Tierney at Denver. Obviously, he coached at Princeton and really brought that program up and had epic battles between him and Coach Desko at Syracuse in the 90s. And now you have Johns Hopkins versus Denver. How great of a matchup would that have been?
Oh, my gosh. Everyone would have gone bonkers for it. It's a great game. You can think about that. That's the other thing I love about college is that it's not so much the players, obviously, but the coaches as well.
Right.
And I think that because I think the other thing people miss also are those old Princeton Johns Hopkins games as well from the 90s, or even like the early 2000s when the Princeton and Johns Hopkins teams went at each other. I look at this now. By the way, I was looking up the miles. Albany going to Loyola.
Yeah.
To Notre Dame. Still closer than it is with Harvard.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense that would be. I definitely sound like an idiot right now. I really should look up that tweet. I don't know who it was, but that's what it was. That's what they had said. But that's obviously it's closer because Albany's a lot closer westward than Harvard is. But getting back to the point, like, it's also two contrasting styles. Denver is up pace, high offense. Their defense is solid but not great. And then Hopkins has to really slow it down, churn it out, half-court offense. And then their defense is very, very physical. Very physical.
I find that funny, by the way, just how Hopkins has really become that in a way. I know I mentioned it like this before, but they play a very similar offense like Hofstra, honestly. It's just that Hopkins has like the more like skilled guys, obviously.
Yeah, they have the higher talent, sexier name kind of thing.
But it's just so funny how like this year, that's actually accurate. It's very accurate how their offenses are quite similar to each other. But looking at the matchups though, there were some good matchups though that they paired them up with. Yes, it really does stink. For me, I think it really stinks for Albany that they have to play Loyola in the first round. At the same time, Loyola has to play Albany in the first round as well. I think Loyola should have gone a top 2 seed.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. What do you think? Do you think Loyola and Denver were kind of like, I don't know the right word for this without sounding like making a bad word, like screwed by the committee? Because look, Loyola, they come in with the two biggest winning streaks, Loyola and Denver, 15 wins and I think like 10 for Denver, but their strength of schedule is low, like really low, because of the conference they played in. But Syracuse shouldn't be a top 2 seed because they have won some good games, but they also got blown out by Duke, blown out by Maryland, and they went 2 and 3 in conference. They were the 3 seed, 4 seed based on a tiebreaker, I guess.
And don't forget that Duke also lost to Syracuse in that ACC. I'm more forgiving of giving Duke a top seed, or to give them the number 1 overall seed when Loyola has not lost a game since beating Duke.
Well, no, they haven't lost a game since Virginia. Virginia was their only loss, and then they went on a 15-game winning streak to end the season.
They definitely could have done this better. But
right.
In terms of matchups, as I was getting back to my
right.
Loyola and Albany, that's still going to be a great matchup to watch. It's going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, the two Tewaaraton guys, Fletcher and Lyle Thompson, and Miles as well. That's going to be a great one-on-one thing. And I do think that Albany, if they can get some possessions their way, they can make it a very, very close game. Another game that's going to be fun to watch is the rivalry, the beatdown in Philly, as I'm going to call it,
Right.
Between Drexel and Penn.
Yeah,
And,
did you see the mascots had a fight?
Oh my gosh! And Franklin Field is actually one of the better lacrosse venues in the country as well. Seeing how Losco played in that Ivy League tournament, I'm excited to see what they can do on the national stage.
Yeah, Lasco, by the way, I mean, I think we previewed him when we previewed the season as just a guy that we should watch out for. You know, he's really played well, especially in the last two games or the Ivy League tournament. He is that offense, the initiator up top. He's the most important player on that offense, hands down.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. But the other point I wanted to make on the Loyola the Loyola Albany game is you also have the second-ranked defense in Loyola, 7.1 goals per game, against the first-ranked offense, 16.3 goals a game. So it is probably the truest, offense versus defense matchup. Let's see what holds true. You know, the old saying, offense wins games, defense wins championships, or offense puts, sells the tickets, but defense, wins championships. That's going to be like the truest sense of the word in that game.
Difference maker in this game is going to have to be Blaze Reardon again. If he can stand on his head, he gives Albany the chance to pull the upset.
He is always the X factor. That defense is the X factor. If they can hold a team to 10 goals or less, their offense is going to find a way.
Yep, and they definitely can do that.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Just,
absolutely.
They do it?
Yeah. What game... I mean, I hate to say that any of these games are really upsets besides the top two games. Duke, Air Force, and, Bryant, Syracuse. But none of these games would really shock me to see a team win. Or, pull an upset over the home team. You know what I mean?
Completely agree. I would consider, I'd give the slight edge in favoritism to Virginia over Hopkins in that game. And Albany over Loyola would be an upset still, but no, I completely agree with what you mean, though. I mean, Harvard even over Notre Dame. Notre Dame, to me, has never established themselves to me as the solid program. To me, of the top, they're the top tier, but of that top tier teams, they're the ones that could easily get upset at any time.
Absolutely. And just for perspective on that Virginia Hopkins game, it is a rematch of this year's game on March 22nd, where Virginia won 11-10. Okay, and the biggest, just some stats to run down. Greg Coholan had 3 goals. James Pinnell went 2-1. Cockerton went 2-0. Tucker had an assist. Emery had a goal. Matt Barrett, though, had 16 saves, and that was the difference because Eric Schneider had 8 saves, posted a 42% save percentage, and, Wells Stanwyck only went 1-1 in that game. So, I think that if we're going to give an edge, it's a very, very slight edge, as you said, to Virginia in that game because I think the X factor has to be Matt Barrett, no?
Oh, absolutely. Barrett has to be big in this type of game. He's got to be impressive in this one, especially going against a team like them. All those difference makers up top.
Yeah, definitely. What do you, I guess if you had to pick one out of the, 8 games that are happening, if you could only watch one, what would be the game you have to watch?
There's personal reasons, I would say Loyola Albany.
Okay.
I would say that. Most underrated game, though, I will say to watch is going to be Drexel Penn.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. If I had to choose a boring game, I would say Cornell, Maryland. Not for the fact that I think there'll be a blowout in that game, but I hate. You're gonna agree with me with this, though.
Oh, I'm sure I will.
With Shannon Chuck's, status uncertain this weekend, I think the Maryland offense dries up again, and I think Cornell wins the same exact way they did last year.
Yeah, but last year they really blew him out of the water. That was the weird thing, is they like really took it to him. They blew him out in that game. It wasn't even close. And Maryland doesn't have the threats on offense that they do now. And obviously Cornell doesn't have the threats on offense either. I mean, they do have Littner, they do have Donovan, they do have Connor Buchek, or however you say his name.
What's happened with Matt Rambo this year, by the way? Because I know like he was supposed to be big, and he has played well.
Yeah.
But I guess I guess it's unfair to give like a kid who hasn't even played a single game of college, all the hype in the world. There's going to be the next college superstar in his first season of college lacrosse.
Yeah, right? he had 32 points, which is very good for a freshman. He did not score. He's actually scored in every game except North Carolina. He had a goal against Notre Dame. He had 2 goals against Notre Dame in their win the week before. He plays well, but I think everything, like you said, everything starts with Chanenchuk. The rest of that offense revolves so heavily around him. I mean, you look at the rest of the lineup, it's Matt Rambo, freshman, Connor Cannizzaro, freshman, Jay Carlson, junior, Henry West, sophomore, Joe Locascio, junior, Brian Cole, junior, Colin Heacock, freshman. Every single one of those guys comes after Chanenchuk in terms of the total points on the team. Chanenchuk has 44. I think you saw that happen in the Notre Dame game. He was slipping a lot. He wasn't drawing the slides. Maryland's offense did not look good in that game at all. And that's the reason why they only scored 5 goals. He is the initiator, and I think it's really, really hard for them to get anything going. And I think this game could be ugly, like that Notre Dame game where it's like 8-7 or 9-8 or one of those scores. I agree with you that it could be a really ugly game.
Most definitely. I think Cornell also, talking to their head coach, especially at the Battle of Bethpage, it was telling me, the success of the team down the stretch is coming down to shooting. They lost those 3 games in that week to Syracuse, Harvard, and Hofstra because they shot the ball poorly and had some bad luck. They beat Princeton in that game at Bethpage because they shot the ball very well throughout the day. And they lost the game at Harvard because, once again, they could not finish or take good shots. I think that following that game, they're going to be focused. Now, I'm not saying that Cornell is going to go far, but I can see them playing very well with a strong bounce-back game in this first round against Maryland, even though obviously we know Maryland has that great defense. Right. I'm just saying that I think Cornell's offense is going to be able to perform up to the level what we expect them to do. It's going to be up to Maryland, I think, from their defense to hold them to what they can, and that key is obviously the game is, can Maryland's offense find a way, with or without Chanenchuk, to win the game? Because I think that's where the game's going to rest on, is Maryland's offense.
Oh, 100%. Maryland's defense is ranked first in the nation. Only allows 6 goals per game, I think, which is an incredible number if you think about it. Or I don't think it's 6. I think it's like 6.7 or something. But I mean, you got Amato, you have Goran Murray, you have Michael Earhart, you have Cooper as well. But that defense can only carry you so far if your offense is going to turn it over and not be able to put the ball back in the back of the net. What do you think is going to happen in Bryan-Syracuse? So last year, I think it was a popular kind of upset pick because Syracuse had a lot of trouble with their face-off men. But Bryan, this year, but I think they got it this year in terms with Daddio. I mean, at first it was really bad. I mean, really, really bad at Syracuse. But then, Daddio all of a sudden, like, it was night and day. The next day, he's like a great face-off man. And Kevin Mass is great, but I think that's their only advantage that Bryant has.
Oh, absolutely. But that possession, I have to agree. I really do have to agree, especially after last season. I mean, the strength of Bryant is possession, and they won nearly every face-off last year, and Syracuse still came away with the win.
Yeah, and a pretty convincing one.
I really have a hard time seeing, what Bryant could do differently to stop Syracuse, especially, I think, Kevin Rice, who, by the way, I think should have been on that Tewaaraton watch list over a guy like Jordan Wolf.
Yeah.
I think he's going to have a stellar game. I think he'll have a great postseason as far as Syracuse goes.
Right. And, just one last note, I guess. What if you had to pick your winners, okay? Duke, I'm going to go really quickly, and I'll say if I agree with you, and then we'll go to the Tewaaraton Award, because I want to talk about that, piggyback off your point. Duke Air Force, who do you have, and why?
Duke, easily too high-powered. Even though Dupree's gone and Air Force has a good attack, I think Duke's just got too many weapons, too many options, and I think they're just going to frankly run over Air Force. Yeah.
Do you think I agree, obviously Duke wins, but do you think it's a little higher? I mean, Duke only won 17 to 11 against Boston, and Boston's a first-year program. Or do you think that was just like, we have another game before the NCAA tournament, let's just get out of here without a loss?
I can't really say that. I think the short rest is going to make it interesting, especially because Duke only has the same amount of time to prepare for Air Force. But I would like to see how that short rest for Air Force is going to play out on Saturday. I think that will be a big on Sunday actually. So they have the extra day actually. But I would like to see how that's going to play out. But again, as I said, I think the rested team and the more talented team wins out on this one.
Yeah, and they also had time change too. Time zone change to factor in as well.
5:15.
Right. Going Virginia, Johns Hopkins. Who do you have and why?
I'm going to say Virginia wins by an edge. I can see Virginia winning by 1 goal.
All right, I'm going to go opposite, and not just to be that guy, but I do think Hopkins has a little stouter of a defense. I don't trust Matt Barrett as of now. I don't trust him. I think he's been too up and down with, being a freshman. Late in the season, obviously he's not a freshman anymore. But, the thing that my coach used to say is the biggest thing about freshmen is that they're consistently inconsistent. So, so I don't trust him. And Virginia's offense, I love Cockerton, but something about them from the midfield standpoint just kind of, I don't know, it leaves me uneasy. I don't know what it is. They have talent, but they just don't put up the points, I guess, that I feel like they should. But, whatever. Denver, North Carolina.
I see Denver winning this and UNC again being screwed. I want UNC to at least make a Final Four again, but you know what? I just have a hard time. I think that travel's going to kill them. But it's going to be hard though for Denver. Denver, I think, is going to earn this win and prove all the naysayers.
Right.
Because obviously everyone's critiquing they haven't played a meaningful game in over a month and a half, 2 months. But it's still Bill Tierney. It's Denver, still a great team. They still have Berg. They still have a good defense and a great offense. And you know what? We've seen this script so many times with North Carolina. We'll see how it goes game day, but I just think that Denver wins. But I will say this though: I won't be surprised if UNC comes out somehow. And if they do, if UNC finds a way past Denver, I will say they go to the Final Four.
Yeah, what's unfortunate is that UNC always has the talent every year to be a Final Four team, but something gets in their way. Whether it's themselves, the coaching, an injury, something weird always happens with them. And this year, I think they were kind of proving the naysayers wrong, they had a big win over Maryland in which they kind of looked iffy, but they came back and they had a pretty good year. Obviously, they didn't make the ACC tournament, which is troubling, but you can't discount some of the wins they had. I think Denver wins, though. I don't know what it is specifically that I like about them. Obviously they have the firepower on offense. The LaPlante, Faust, goalie combination works. But I think the travel going out there, it's going to be a sold-out stadium, too. That game was sold out immediately in Denver, so it's going to be an awesome crowd.
They always supported the Pioneers in the postseason.
Yeah.
Very well.
Oh, yeah. Let's go on the next game, which would be Drexel versus Penn. Your underrated, I guess not underrated game, but game to watch outside of Loyola and Albany. Who do you have there?
I'm gonna say it's a brutal back and forth contest with Losco leading the way, and Penn finds a way to win in this. But I wouldn't be shocked if Drexel can at least force overtime in this one. This honestly, of all the games, I think could be the closest one of the first round.
Yeah. All right. What are you thinking? Goal in overtime?
I'm thinking goal in overtime determines this one.
Interesting. I think. Keep going.
I was just gonna say, I think Drexel's gonna make it a blue collar type of game. Penn has played that style before in some of their victories this season. It's gonna be physical. It's gonna be a rowdy crowd as well, because the Philadelphia fans always support their teams very well. So I think it will be a very good contest there. But one fan base is going to have to eat the other rival's cheesesteaks at the end that they don't like.
I wonder if this is like a Pats and Geno's type thing. Like, do you think like the people at Drexel are all Pats and like the people at Penn are all Geno's? Like, do you think it's like a turf war?
No, it's like I said right now, Drexel's cheesesteaks are Abner's cheesesteaks. Actually, a very good cheesesteak place. A few blocks away from their campus. I would say they're like Abner's in the top 5, but they're not Pats and Geno's though. And I don't know where Penn is, honestly. Maybe Bobby Lou's?
I have no idea. I mean, those are the only two places. I went to Jewish, sleepaway camp with a lot of kids from the area, and that's all they raved about was Pats and Geno's, no other place. So I'm solely basing my cheesesteak knowledge off them.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go to the other side of the bracket, or other half of the bracket. Loyola Albany. Obviously, we went through this. Joe Fletcher, Lyle Thompson is the matchup of like the last couple years. Pitt's probably the best offensive player we've seen in the last, I don't know, you'd say decade maybe, versus the best defensive player in maybe the last half decade. What do you think holds up? Do you think it's Loyola and their defense, or Albany and their offense?
I can see Loyola's offense winning this game for the fact of possessions. That, to me, is going to be a difference. I think Runkle can make some saves.
Right.
I think they can limit Albany to an extent. I can easily see like Albany being held to 12 goals in this game.
Right.
I don't think Fletcher can shut down Lyle though. I think what he can do is, like Gleasner, he can limit him. Like
right.
Gleasner had 2 goals on 22 shots when they played Army. But I think Lyle will get off. The question is, how do they guard Miles? Miles is going to be the biggest question mark of them.
Yeah.
Because he's the one that can, obviously.
Well, he had back-to-back 9-point games in that America East.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And 7 goals in both of them each.
Right.
So, I mean, I would not be shocked if they actually use Fletcher to guard Miles at some point. Especially if he starts to go off,
Right.
I mean, how else do you stop them?
Yeah, it's funny because Loyola doesn't really have that second, like, great defense. It's like they have one really stud defenseman and then a couple, like, good guys who work in the scheme of a defensive, in their defensive scheme, like a team defense. So it'll be interesting. Definitely be interesting.
I will say quickly,
yes.
The other factor in this game, as always, could be the Albany midfield as well. They are a bunch of underrated players, sharpshooters as well. They were in the UMBC game. They really got the team going. They can pick corners on the run from distance. Do not underestimate Albany's midfield.
Right, Ryan Feuerstein.
Feuerstein. I forgot the second guy there. But
John Maloney, he's a sophomore.
Yeah, Maloney, the other one. Those two really played well in the America East Championship game.
Right.
Again, keep an eye out for that midfield, because if they can contribute a handful of goals, they will really spread out the defense. and make the Thompsons' life a lot easier.
Yeah. Though I will say, last point for Loyola is that they've got a pretty damn good offense themselves. Justin Ward, who I thought should have been a Tewaaraton finalist, and, you know, Nico Pontrello, as well as Brian Schultz, too. So, you know, they can bring it. Let's go to Harvard Notre Dame, because I think this is going to be one of the... If it's not Cornell, Maryland, I think Harvard Notre Dame's the ugliest game of the day. Because I think these two teams are so similar in the way they play. They grind it out. They, you know, play defense. They really take their time in the half court.
Absolutely. Sorry. I just think Kavanaugh is going to carry over what he did in the ACC, though. I think he's going to erupt again. I think he will be a tournament favorite for the tournament MVP favorite.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that scares me in Notre Dame is their defense, though, especially in that Army game. It just showed me that their defense is still not championship worthy in a way. It's going to be hard, honestly. And their goaltending also has just not been stellar still. Even at least not to give you confidence going for them into the tournament. Meanwhile, I really came away impressed with the Crimson's goaltender after
Gambitsky,
because he even played well against Penn, despite Penn pulling away later in the game. But I thought he played very well. This would be a game, I would say, as I mentioned, of the top tier teams, Notre Dame in my book is always the one that is on alert to get upset.
Yeah.
But I still think that their offense will burst through and come away with the win.
Right. Let's pick this in tandem. Bryant, Syracuse, Maryland, Cornell. Who do you have in both games?
Sorry, repeat that.
Maryland and Cornell, Bryant, Syracuse. Who do you have in both games?
Quickly, I'm going to say Maryland with the edge. Actually, no. I'm going to go Cornell again. I'm going to say Cornell beats Maryland again, second year in a row, similar way. Might not be a blowout, but I think they just edge them. And Syracuse gets by Bryant.
Yeah.
Same reasons.
I think Syracuse blows out Bryant. It'll be close from the beginning, but they'll blow him out afterwards. And then Maryland, Cornell. I never trust my Terps. It's just a Maryland thing when you're a fan and they get good and get to these places and they're expected to win. They don't play well. When they're expected to lose, that's when they play well. Maryland loses, Cornell goes on. Before we go here, John, because I know you and I both want to watch the NFL draft, which has been very interesting so far. Blake Bortles in number 3, and then Buffalo trades up to pick. So, very interesting.
John Manziel has not been drafted yet.
Yeah, he probably won't, but for a little while. Last point, Tewaaraton Award. So this is the Heisman Trophy of lacrosse. The 5 finalists that were named today. Joe Fletcher, defenseman out of Loyola. Midfielder Tom Schreiber out of Princeton. Lyle Thompson and Miles Thompson out of Albany. And then Jordan Wolfe. I got that right? Did I just screw that up? Yeah, Jordan Wolfe out of Duke. I don't know where my head's at right now. Did they get it right, yes or no?
I think for the most part they did. As I said, I would have liked to see Kevin Rice there. I know Schreiber was the best midfielder in the nation, but considering the fact that one of his team didn't make it, and again, as I said, I think he played very well, but I mean, considering that Albany as well had Lyle and even Miles for the far that had to carry them, I think Schreiber could have either done more or not enough credit should be given to other players who did something similar in that aspect. And for the most part, I thought Kevin Rice on offense carried Syracuse to an extent with the subtraction of Stotts, obviously, on the midfield.
Right. I think I would have taken out Schreiber and out Fletcher. I think it's an offensive award, and for Fletcher to be in it, it's kind of just a waste, technically, because he's not going to win it anyway. And I would have had Kevin Rice in there instead, and I would have had Justin Ward as well, because I took the whole entire encompassing, factors of your stats, your importance to the team in terms of if someone else played for you and you didn't play for the team, how would your team be? And then in terms of your team success, Schreiber obviously is one of the best players in the nation. He's top, number 1 pick in the MLL, best midfielder in the nation. But he no-showed in 2 huge games for Princeton, which is troubling. And obviously, if you replaced him with an average midfielder, I don't think that team wins more than 4 games. But at the end of the day, their team record was 7-5. They didn't make the Ivy League tournament, and they didn't make the NCAA tournament, obviously. And then I would have put Kevin Rice in there because I really feel like, and I would add Jordan Wolf. So Kevin Rice really, really turned it on for Syracuse, and that's when they started playing their best, is when he started playing his best. And he had an incredible couple of efforts the last in the ACC tournament. I think let me look it up real quick. I don't know if you know it offhand, but I think he went something ridiculous. He went 3-4 against Colgate. That wasn't the tournament, but in the 2 games, he went 3-5 against Duke and 1-6 against Notre Dame. 3-3 against North Carolina, 3-4 against Cornell, 4-2 against Notre Dame before that. He's the key for the team. He's a really good player, and then Jordan Wolf, he's the trendsetter on Duke. So, he does everything for them. He has big games as well. That's who I would have chosen instead of Fletcher and Schreiber. Otherwise, I totally agree with everybody else.
So now, who is your winner of the Tewaaraton?
I think we're pretty much in agreement, but it's Lyle Thompson. If Albany had not made it, if Albany had lost that great game that you covered against Stony Brook, I don't think those 2 guys win. And yeah, they may be the best players, but their team success has to have something to do with it. And I would have put Justin Ward or Jordan Wolf ahead of him just because of the combination of team success and also the fact that they're going to put up points, and they're going to put up even more points as their teams go farther in the NCAA tournament. So that's just my thought, but Lyle's going to run away with it.
Lyle Thompson is going to break the single season record for most points in the NCAA season.
Right.
On the first play, I'm convinced, against Loyola, or at least like in the first quarter.
Right. Yeah, he'll get an assist or a goal or something. He's not going to be shut down for long.
Exactly, and he will break the record.
Yeah.
And it will be great. That game against Stony Brook, I think he won the tournament with that game alone.
Oh yeah.
And Jim Nagel, the Stony Brook coach, even said it. Like, he think it's going to be crap if he doesn't win. The man, Lyle, is the best player in the nation.
Oh yeah.
He helped win them the game nearly single-handedly. Miles also, I think, I do not discredit Miles Thompson as well. Miles is almost if as important as Lyle to Albany and to his brother as well. Miles helps drive Lyle to success, and that is something that needs to be taken into account off the field as well, is that connection that he has to Albany and to his brother, who technically, if you want to go into super logical reasons, is technically, this Tewaaraton Award nominee can help influence the Tewaaraton Award nominee / winner. So, transitive property, if you will, Miles could technically win it over Lyle.
Yeah. By the way, I think Miles, something to note that I do know for a fact is that they mentioned in the telecast that Miles and Lyle are the first teammates to ever record 100 points in the same season. I don't think Miles will ever push Lyle, overcome him at all. He's at 100 points, by the way. But I think Miles could get to probably 106.7 maybe, if Lyle does well, So I think if Albany makes a surprisingly big run, then I think both of them could technically break the old point record.
The other difference is, the other thing I should note, Miles is 8 goals away from breaking the single-season goals record as well.
Yeah, he has 73. The next closest guy had 51, which is Jordan Wolf.
Exactly.
That's how
So,
dominant he is.
if that doesn't show you, that it should be a 2-horse race between the Thompson brothers, I mean, I would love to see a defenseman win the Tewaaraton this year, or any year.
Right.
But it has to be Lyle or at least Miles Thompson this year.
Yeah.
There should be no debate. It should be those two, and the other 3 were just honorable mentions.
What happens? What do you think the family atmosphere is like? It's like, yo, like like I beat you, like big bros repping it. Or I mean, little bros like overcoming big bro, and he just has huge bragging rights.
I think just watching, just doing a lot, watching a lot on the teams, interviewing the players, seeing them interact. I really think that it doesn't really matter as much. They're all just happy to be there, happy to do what they're doing. They're humble for just being around and just for competing purposes. But I know somewhere, I'm sure Lyle is saying, "Oh, I can't wait." I'm pretty excited to get this. I'm pretty sure he has to be thinking that. On another note, I wanted to mention, if Miles or Lyle win the Tewaaraton, would that technically be the first Native American to win this award?
I'm pretty sure, because I think they've been the biggest stars for Native Americans in the game. I would say ever, because obviously Jeremy Thompson, the brother, cousin of one of them, or both of them, or whatever he is, he was probably like the first real notable guy coming out of Syracuse. And they've kind of, and I think there was a feature when they did the whole Thompson story on TV, that a lot of programs didn't really recruit Native Americans until all the Thompsons went into, went to play for Albany. Then coaches started traveling to the reservations or wherever they live and started recruiting guys. I think Zach Miller is a Native American, if I'm not mistaken, on Denver, and he's one of their best players. One question I want to ask you, if Lyle wins this year, one, is he the first guy to potentially go back-to-back, and 2, does he go back-to-back?
I was thinking about that this weekend, actually. If he could, I don't think he can duplicate next season, considering that, considering obviously his brother's going to be, his brother and cousin Miles and Ty are going to be gone.
Right.
I think he'll still put up a high number of points. I think he'll have to do a lot more heavy lifting. I don't know. It's hard to say. It really, to me, is hard to say a year from now. I think he'll definitely be on the watch list. But as a finalist, I can't say right now.
I think this is the thing for me, because I don't know if Lyle is like, without sounding like I'm taking something away from him, but I don't know how good Lyle is by himself. I don't know how good Miles is good like by himself. And Ty's numbers have actually really dipped this year from last year. He only has 47 points.
Well.
Yeah. So how good are they all by themselves? I mean, Miles and Ty are both going to Rochester to play because they're both seniors. But let's see how good Lyle is next year when both guys are gone.
That should be interesting to watch.
Right. So that's it for me. I mean, I don't really know what else. I don't know if there's really anything else to talk about. Otherwise, we're just gonna have to sit back, enjoy this NFL draft, and then obviously, of course, enjoy the weekend slate of games, because they're gonna be, all those games are gonna be very, very good to watch. So obviously, you can tweet at us with your predictions if you want at NCAA Lax Gameday, at Goldberg, and at John_A_Iadevaia. John, let's hope that the NFL draft has even more twists and turns than it already has, and they've only been 6 picks in.
It should be some interesting drama. I just hope ESPN doesn't Tim Tebow Johnny Manziel.
Yeah, the thing is though that like Johnny Manziel is the ultimate like the opposite side of the spectrum, and it's awesome. because he does everything not Tim Tebow, and it's great. But we'll sign off from here so we can both enjoy the rest of our night. So, John, enjoy the rest of your night. And for our listeners, try to follow us at NCAA Gameday and help us get to 200 followers. Let's go. Let's hit a milestone. Let's do it. All right.